One of the things when you're in a business negotiation, they say that the devil is in the details. Well, that has been put on display this week. President Trump has announced that he's looking at 25% tariffs on imported cars and automobile parts into the United States, which means, of course, is that they're going to be charging everything that's going in. What does that do? Well, potentially it's going to increase the cost to Americans for any other foreign entity that is going to be shipping in parts and cars. But before we jump up and down like the current leadership in Canada is doing, why don't we take a look at one very, very important point that was put into the details of this announcement. And it's right here, because one of the things that Canada and Mexico has is the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. And what it's doing, it's going to give the opportunity to certify the U.S. content and systems being implemented into these cars. So, very clearly, the United States has said USMCA compliant automobile parts will remain tariff-free until the Secretary of Commerce, in consultation with U.S. Customs, establishes a process to apply tariffs. So in other words, that date is going to be moving. Now, one of the important things I think people have to understand is that between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, there was already a trade agreement in place. And so President Trump is merely stating that some of the content from other countries may have tariffs put onto it. But what does the government of Canada immediately do? Well, they take it as an attack. It's a war. And the head of the Liberal Party, because I will not give him really the designation of Prime Minister. So how about the unelected Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, yesterday had a comment about this. Let's see what Mark has to say.
What we are facing now, though, is the most significant crisis of our lifetimes. Because of President Trump's unjustified tariffs and his threats to our sovereignty. Today, President Trump, just a few hours ago, announced further tariffs on our auto sector. Escalated his attacks, and that's what these tariffs are. They are attacks on Canada, but they are attacks on our workers.
All right. Enough's enough, Mark. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. First and foremost, this is the greatest crisis that we've had in our lifetime. Mark, you are an absolute disgrace to the title of Prime Minister. I thought maybe you might consider COVID as the greatest crisis that Canada and the rest of the world has ever faced. But no, not you, Mark. You sit there and still can't negotiate with another leader to even have a conversation about this. To turn around and paint this as an attack. Well, I'm sorry, Mark. You know, one of the things that clearly in your Business 101 class that you took to get that, toilet paper degree of yours, perhaps they should have shown what tariffs truly mean, Mark. And the fact that you are one of the people that are going to sit there and go, let's match them tariff for tariff. You are going to punish Canadians with a retaliatory tariff, Mark. And yeah, I'm not going to call you a prime minister because you're not acting like one, nor do you have the capability of acting like one. But, one that isn't exactly acting correctly is, of course, the Premier of Ontario, the bully from the Bronx. That's right, Doug Ford. What does Doug have to say about this?
President Trump's calling it Liberation Day. I call it Termination Day for American workers. I know, President Trump likes telling people you're fired. I didn't think he meant auto workers in the U.S. when he said that. I had an opportunity to speak to the Prime Minister, and I'm in full support of preparing retaliatory tariffs, tariff for tariff. But we want to see what he's going to do on April the 2nd. As we've seen over a number of months, it's on again, off again. And he said he wasn't going to do it till April 2nd. Well, he launched an early attack, which is not surprising. But I've asked the Prime Minister to convene an FMM call as soon as possible.
So, there was almost something that Mr. Ford said that was almost at the level of intelligence. I'm not sure if everybody caught it, but he said, we're going to wait and see. And he threw out April 2nd as a date. And, that's probably the smartest thing that he has said in the last several months. Normally he's got his dukes up. And of course he does want to hit everybody with retaliatory tariffs. And the one thing actually that shocked me was he actually did consider American workers. And yeah, will it have a bit of an adverse effect on American workers? Not the workers, but the actual, citizens that, yeah, if there's things being brought in from Canada, it's going to cost them more money. Now, of course, we're not going to get into the idea that our dollar is so low that basically, it's, you get 2 for 1. But in the end, these politicians aren't, again, looking at this the correct way. So far, Trump has pulled it back. He's sitting there saying, give some leeway. But here in Canada, we are a complete and rudderless ship. We have no political strength because, quite frankly, we have nobody leading the country. And again, back to the, unelected prime minister, one of the things that I've said before, we have to keep our eye on him. I don't want him pulling an emergency lever on Canadians coming into an election. This falls into his narrative, but as Canadians, forget about standard media. It's been uncovered that, Mark Carney and some of his cohorts actually are the ones that control the Globe and Mail. And we all know here that CBC is controlled by the government. We know that reporters are getting favorable tax exemptions if they give a favorable report about the government. I mean, there's all sorts of misleading media. And I'm not hopping on any other country's, media comments of fake news, but I can assure you that there's a ton of it. Having been in, standard media for 10 years, there's a lot of fake news that is being forced down the throats of Canadians. And at this stage, we have to be very mindful of what we're being told. But the one thing I think that when we start talking about tariffs, okay, we have to remember what tariffs truly do to the actual country themselves when they impose it on another country. And it's really going to hurt Canadians if we start going tariff for tariff. Agree or disagree, that's okay. And I'd love to hear your comments on these kind of things because I think it's important that everybody does have a voice. But the truth is right now, the natural reaction for everybody is they read the headline and forget the details. And the details right now are saying that we are exempt until we can establish what content is American. And just so we're clear, the majority of all parts that are actually being put into cars, a good part of it comes from the United States. So it's going to be very hard to discern. So at this point, don't everybody lose their minds, okay? It's still something in progress, and you never know. April 2nd, Donald Trump may look at it and say, I'm still waiting for a proper leader of Canada, so I'm going to wait until I can negotiate with somebody that actually cares about their own citizens. Because that's what he does. He's all about America, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's doing what America elected him to do. We have an election coming up April the 28th, hopefully. Yes, there's still the possibility that something could go awry and something that could happen to the election. But for now, the one thing you need to count on is, do you want to move forward with the existing government? Because that's what they are, the existing, it's not a new government, the existing government in place that's destroyed Canada over the last 10 years? Or are you looking for somebody that's going to put Canadians first, worry about our fellow Canadians, worry about our families, worry about our children, and the next generation? Love to hear your comments. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Todd C. Slater.